Rishi Sunak is an outstanding public servant. He has a fantastic grasp of policy. He can make decisions, and he has made a lot of good decisions. And I think, if I may use a sort of Christian metaphor, the Archangel Gabriel would not have been able to win this election. We've been in power for 14 years. The first 9 of those, we repeatedly won elections, but the last 5 have been extremely difficult, both domestically and internationally. And as I say, I think if the Archangel Gabriel had been leading the Conservative Party, he or she would not have been able to win.
Most people, both I suspect in Britain and outside the country, will remember Rishi Sunak as the first non-white Prime Minister of Britain, and as far as my country is concerned, the first of Indian origin. Would that be his real lasting legacy? That he broke a glass ceiling that was considered unimaginable even half a decade before he did so?
I think that is right, but it's better than that. It is that he broke through that ceiling, and that it caused very little comment in Britain. You know, there are not many countries where it would be possible, and very few countries where people would regard it as relatively unremarkable. And it is one of the great issues of pride for the Conservative Party that we have had now 3 prime ministers who are women. We've had Rishi most recently, and the Labour Party really only elect men from North London, mainly Islington, and haven't done any of those things. So we are in the Conservative Party very proud of that.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. How do Britain's Conservatives view their stunning defeat? And how should we assess Rishi Sunak's legacy as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Those are 2 key issues I shall raise today with Britain's former Deputy Foreign Secretary, former Secretary of State for International Development, and the present Conservative MP for Sutton Coldfield, Andrew Mitchell. Andrew Mitchell, let me start by congratulating you on your re-election. What does it feel like to be one of an exclusive club of 121 Tory MPs?
Well, thank you very much, Karen. It was quite a night. The BBC, on their exit poll, announced that I had been soundly defeated, but the good people of the royal town of Sutton Coldfield thought otherwise, and I managed to retain the seat with a majority of 2,500. So I'm very grateful to my constituents in the royal town for that. It's also only the second election in 11 elections, my first one being in 1983. It's only the second election where I've had to write a winning speech and a losing speech. So it had that distinction. But also there's a slight sense of déjà vu, because in 1997, when I lost my seat, that was the last time the Conservative Party faced such a terrible defeat. But we rebuilt, we regrouped, and we came back. And we've just completed 14 years in government, which I think the historians will perhaps be kinder about than some of our contemporaries and journalists.
Now, before I talk to you about Rishi Sunak's legacy, let me ask you a couple of questions about the results. The Tories have, I think, lost 250 seats. They're left with just 121. Do you view this as a Labour victory or a stunning Tory defeat?
Well, I think what is interesting is that we did rather better than the opinion polls had predicted. We got 24%, and the opinion polls had sort of been flatlining at 19 and 20%. And the Labour Party got 34% and have got a landslide victory. And of course, this leads people to scratch their heads and say, well, you know, if you got only 34%, how come you are utterly dominant in government? Quentin Hailsham, the famous Lord Chancellor, once described as an elected dictatorship. I think that, and Labour also got less votes than when they were led by Jeremy Corbyn, the controversial left winger, in 2019. They got less votes, so that's caused a certain amount of head scratching. It is clearly a very strong defeat for the Conservative Party. I congratulate the Labour Party on their victory. We will try to form a very constructive and decent opposition so that the government is fully scrutinised. After all, a good government has good scrutiny, and that's what we will try to provide. It is a significant defeat for the Conservative Party. No government has ever won 5 elections in a row, and we are, after all, a cricket-playing country, and people will believe that it's a decent thing to let the other team have a go. But one of the things which I believe strongly, Karen, is that having done the international development job, I have seen people fighting and dying for democracy and accountability around the world. And I think Britain has set a stunning example of how the electorate, the people, are the masters, and we, the politicians, are the servants of the people. And in some of the individual results, you see that as well. But I think it is a stunning example. And of course, Britain and investment into Britain and our economy and our world standing will grow as a result of the way in which this entirely peaceful and democratic transfer has taken place.
Now, the reform vote shot up to 15%, whilst the Lib Dems got 72 seats, and both of that has happened at the cost of the Conservatives. So how large is their role in your party's defeat?
Well, the Liberal Democrats got significantly wiped out, really, after the coalition years in 2015. And they've come back from that, and they have done well in parts of the country where there has always been a traditional Liberal vote. But they have done well, and I congratulate them on their significantly increased presence in the House of Commons. And as for Reform, they now have 5 members of Parliament. Reform is a protest party. I believe that their manifesto doesn't really take account of the difficulties that we face in government. And, you know, the electorate will be unforgiving if Labour now don't, as the electorate would see it, succeed. And the challenges are very...
answering my question, Mr. Mitchell. To what extent did the increase in the reform vote and the number of seats the Lib Dems won happen at the cost of your party?
Well, hugely so, because by definition, because the seats that they have taken are almost entirely from the Conservative Party. But I think my point really is that the Liberals have recovered a lot of seats that they lost in 2015, and Reform is a reflection of protest. It is the politics of protest rather, in my view, than the politics of choice.
Now, 2 of your fellow Conservative former ministers, Suella Braverman and Robert Jenrick, have told the Financial Times that the real reason why your party lost is because of the uncontrolled immigration situation, because of the faltering status of the National Health Service, and because of high taxes. To what extent are they right?
Well, all of those 3 are undoubtedly ingredients. No government will be able to win an election unless it can stop the unfettered access to Britain across the Channel of illegal migrants. And our failure to do so, although we did have a plan to do it, is certainly part of the reason for our defeat. The National Health Service was knocked severely off course by COVID, and the strike by junior hospital doctors didn't help. So that too would be laid to our account. But remember that the reason why taxes are high is because Rishi Sunak, when he was Minister of Finance, constructed a furlough scheme during COVID designed to protect the living standards and lives and families and jobs across the UK, and it cost us £400 billion. And, you know, it was the right thing to do. It was a sort of quasi-wartime situation, and we took on an enormous amount of debt, and that debt has to be repaid. Otherwise, it just results in higher taxation for future generations. So all 3 of those things are factors, as you rightly say, but those are the immutable difficulties and problems with which a democratic government has to wrestle.
So was defeat inevitable?
Well, as I say, no party has ever been re-elected 5 times in a row, and we are a cricket-playing nation.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Let's come to Rishi Sunak. Was it a mistake to hold elections in July when he could have waited right up till December?
Well, he could have done so. The question was, as you get closer to the buffers, it's much more difficult to maneuver. I think he felt, therefore, it's better to go a bit earlier. But I want to make the point that at the outset of our discussion about Rishi Sunak is an outstanding public servant. He has a fantastic grasp of policy. He can make decisions, and he has made a lot of good decisions. And I think, if I may use a sort of Christian metaphor, the Archangel Gabriel would not have been able to win this election. We've been in power for 14 years. The first 9 of those, we repeatedly won elections, but the last 5 have been extremely difficult, both domestically and internationally. And as I say, I think if the Archangel Gabriel had been leading the Conservative Party, he or she would not have been able to win.
But there are reports that the Tory party wasn't fully ready for the campaign when the election was announced at the end of May. And there are also reports of the criticism Rishi Sunak faced for his decision to leave the D-Day celebrations early. Did the Tories suffer on both counts?
Well, on the second, it clearly was a mistake to leave the D-Day celebrations early, as Rishi Sunak has made clear, and he apologised. And in the maelstrom of election planning, mistakes do get made, and that was clearly one of them. In terms of the readiness, these things will all come out in due course, because we shall certainly be sort of lifting up the manholes to see what's underneath. But I think that no government, when it goes to the electorate, is ever absolutely ready, because these things have to be concluded in great secrecy. But my observation was that the support from the party centrally was no worse than it normally is.
Let me ask you, as a cabinet colleague of Rishi Sunak, how would you assess his 20-month tenure as Prime Minister? What would be his legacy?
I think, first of all, you have to accept that his was a poisoned chalice that he was handed. And as I say, very, very difficult indeed to at that stage, so far down the line, to rescue the Conservative Party and the government. One of the most important things that he did achieve, which he promised to achieve, and he did, was to reduce inflation from 11% down to 2%. And I think when the history books come to be written, that will be seen as incredibly important, the success that he and Jeremy Hunt achieved. And I say that because inflation is the thief in the night that steals your nest egg if you are an older person having saved a bit of capital during your life. But it also stops youngsters from getting on the housing ladder and having the joy of owning their own home, because the mortgage rate, determined in large part by the level of inflation, is beyond them. And I think that's a very great success that he achieved. And he had a plan on migration. He had a plan on the NHS, which was thwarted partly by COVID, but also by the strike. and he had a plan for growth and reducing debt. Well, we have started to reduce debt, and growth is the big issue which has eluded the British government under both parties for many years. And we have to find an answer to growth. And the answer to growth is certainly motivating people to work and be part of the productive economy. But it's also getting rid of some of the structural rigidities which do exist in the British economy.
I hear what you say, Mr. Mitchell, but there is a view, and I'm quoting British newspapers, that what Rishi Sunak really did was to bring stability to British politics, respectability to the office of the Prime Minister, and a certain limited measure of health to the economy. But that's about it. Would you agree that those may be important achievements, but they're not necessarily very impressive ones?
Well, they're very important achievements, and they certainly today look, you say not impressive, but they certainly today look as though they are basic achievements, but they didn't look like that when Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister 19 months ago. So I think you have to give him credit for having wrestled with an impossible situation and done a number of things, some of which you very articulately just set out.
But tell me, most people, both I suspect in Britain and outside the country, will remember Rishi Sunak as the first non-white Prime Minister of Britain, and as far as my country is concerned, the first of Indian origin. Would that be his real lasting legacy? That he broke a glass ceiling that was considered unimaginable even half a decade before he did so?
I think that is right, but it's better than that. It is that he broke through that ceiling and that it caused very little comment in Britain. You know, there are not many countries where it would be possible, and very few countries where people would regard it as relatively unremarkable. And it is one of the great issues of pride for the Conservative Party that we have had now 3 prime ministers who are women. We've had Rishi most recently, and the Labour Party really only elect men from North London, mainly Islington, and haven't done any of those things. So we are in the Conservative Party very proud of that.
There's no doubt that Britain has stunned the world, not just by electing its first non-white prime minister, but you've had several Black or Asian chancellors of the Exchequer, home secretaries, foreign secretaries, not to mention first ministers in Wales and Scotland and the mayor of London. But that is a reflection of the way the country has changed. The question that I've heard frequently is how ready was the Conservative Party itself, and how ready were your loyal voters for their first non-white prime minister?
Well, I think it's been an outstanding success precisely because there has been so little comment about it. And I think that's a very good reflection on Britain and a fabulous reflection too on the Conservative Party at a time when its fortunes are very low now and we have to rebuild. We can take great pride in that.
I'm coming right to the end of this interview, but look down the road if it's at all possible to do so. How do you see the future of the Tory party? Marcus Fish, who was an MP until just about 5 days ago, has said to the Financial Times, the Tories are dead. He says, and I'm quoting him, there's no chance of being electable again. It's time to move on.
Well, we've been here before. We were here in 1997 when I lost my own seat, and I understand how Marcus feels at this time. But you know, the thing about the Conservative Party is that we are a ruthless machine for understanding power and winning power, and that is why the Conservative Party has been the most successful government acquiring, power winning political party in the Western world. And we will certainly come back to this. We will regroup. We will listen carefully to those we seek to serve, to win their support once again. And we will go through a renewal process and we will come out the other side. So as Tony Blair once said, shortly after the last time we suffered a terrible defeat, the Tories haven't gone away, they're only sleeping.
So this is the start of a dark, perhaps long night, but there definitely will be a dawn.
That is certainly one effective way of putting it, Karen.
Andrew Mitchell, thank you very much for the time you made available to me. Take care, stay safe.
Thank you, Karen.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.